The story goes that a man left his faithful dog behind, and what ensued will surely move you to tears. Dogs are renowned for their affection, intellect, and emotional depth, making them one of the most captivating and endearing creatures on earth. Owning a dog is, therefore, a remarkable experience. Unfortunately, Rex, a canine, had his life turned around after his owner deserted him by a deserted street and disappeared without a trace. However, it's the subsequent events that are truly exceptional, capable of touching the deepest corners of your heart. Rex had been with his owner since he was a mere puppy, barely big enough to fend for himself. His owner had painstakingly trained him to eat, drink, and use the bathroom properly. He had also accompanied Rex on his first walk, where the golden retriever puppy had joyfully frolicked around the park, sniffing the fresh grass, playing with other dogs, and forging new acquaintances. As Rex grew, his owner always brought him toys and treats, and they loved to play together in the garden before flopping down on the sofa together to watch TV and fall asleep. So Rex thought nothing of it when his owner ushered him into the car. He thought they were just going on another fun adventure, maybe to a park or field, or maybe to meet some new friends. That certainly would be fun. They drove for several hours, and Rex happily watched the world fly by the window, savoring the new sights and smells as they traveled. Eventually, they pulled into a small, quiet street, and Rex's owner reached over and clipped a leash around his neck. Excited to be getting out of the car and going for a walk, Rex went to lick his face, but he was roughly pushed away. He thought it was strange, but didn't think too much about it. His owner exited the car and walked around to the passenger side, opening the door and allowing Rex to jump out. The owner took hold of Rex's leash and walked him several meters to a streetlight pole that was cemented into the ground. He then proceeded to tie the leash to the pole, tethering Rex to that one spot, unable to move away from it. Then, without so much as looking at Rex, the owner stood up and walked quietly back to his car, climbing behind the wheel and speeding away from the scene. Rex was confused. Was this a game like the ones they used to play back at home? Was his owner going to fetch something like a toy or some food before coming back? Rex wasn't sure, but his tail continued wagging in excitement and anticipation. But 1 minute turned to 10 minutes, and then that became an hour, and then 2, and then 3, and still Rex remained there all alone, tied to the pole. His tail slowly stopped wagging as a sad and sobering realization settled upon him. Maybe he was never going to see his owner again. Perhaps he had been abandoned. Rex quietly whined to himself and looked around. Only the occasional person passed by and didn't give the dog a second glance. Similarly, several cars had driven up and down the street, but paid no attention to the dog tied to the pole. Being alone didn't suit Rex at all. He was a friendly and sociable dog and loved to be around people, but it started to dawn on the poor dog that maybe people didn't like to be around him. He laid on the ground, sad and dejected. Out of the corner of his eye, though, he caught sight of a young woman walking towards him. She was in her late teens and listening to her music, but there could be no doubt that she had noticed the dog tied to the pole in front of her too. The girl glanced at Rex as she passed, but carrying on walking, making sure she kept out of reach of the potentially dangerous animal. Letting out a small whine, Rex lay down again. Sure that he would never, ever find someone to love him, but suddenly the girl stopped. She slowly turned around and gave the dog another look, pulling her headphones out before slowly approaching him. Nervously reaching out a hand, she went to stroke his head. Gently making contact with Rex's head, she started rubbing her hand up and down his body. And for the first time since his owner had driven away, Rex's tail started wagging again. Realizing the dog wasn't dangerous, the girl looked around for poor Rex's owner. There was no one to be seen, though. She even waited an hour to see if anyone came to retrieve the beautiful dog. But no one came. Night would be falling soon, and she knew she had to do something to help Rex. She tried to untie his leash, but found the knot to be far too tight for her to undo. She didn't even have anything to cut or snip it with. Thinking fast, she grabbed her cell phone and made a call to her best friend. She'd know what to do. She told her where they were and instructed her to bring several items to help poor Rex out with. While they waited for her friend to show up, the girl took photos of the scene as evidence for the police. It was a cruel and nasty thing to abandon a dog like that, and she would make sure that she filed a report and submitted her photos as evidence. Even if Rex's owner couldn't be found, at least police would be aware that things like this were happening to poor, defenseless animals. Within 10 minutes, the girl's friend had turned up in her car. Running over to the scene, she gave Rex a lot of fuss and cuddles. He was certainly enjoying all the attention, and his tail was a blur as it wagged to and from. The friend had brought a blanket to keep Rex warm, as well as a water bowl and a large can of food for him to drink and eat. Rex gladly tucked in and lapped up the cool, refreshing water before sitting on his new blanket and watching the girl struggle to untie the knot. After several long minutes, it started to come loose and finally feel free of the pole. Rex jumped up, happy to not be tethered anymore. The first girl decided that he needed a small walk. She had no idea how long Rex had been tied up to the pole, and she knew that he must have wanted to stretch his legs a little bit. She was right. Rex happily pulled her along as they walked up and down the street, but darkness was starting to fall, so they returned to the car to discuss their next steps. The two friends were unsure what to do next. Do they take him home? Do they allow him to wander off and roam free? Do they call a shelter and let them come and take him away? One glance at Rex's happy eyes and the answer was clear. He was obviously a loving dog and had a lot to offer and a lot of love to give. He was ready to fill someone's life up with love, and in return, all he wanted back was love too. The girl smiled. She would take the dog home and keep him for herself. She had longed for a pet, but never actually gone out. And she was always too worried about not being a good owner and thought that when the time was right, she'd know. Well, it seemed like fate had stepped in and introduced her to Rex, and this was the sign she had been looking for. Bending down to look the happily panting dog in the eye, she made a vow to love and protect him for as long as she needed to. She wouldn't carelessly abandon him as his old owner did. She wouldn't hurt him or make him feel useless or unloved. The girl would care for him every day and give the gorgeous golden retriever the life he truly deserved. She took him home, and the pair lived out the rest of Rex's life in peace, quiet, and happiness. What are your impressions of this heartening tale? If you stumbled upon a dog like Rex abandoned on the roadside, how would you have responded? Would you have provided refuge for the helpless creature, or would you have simply ignored it? Please share your insights and viewpoints in the comments section below, and remember to give a thumbs up and follow us for more inspiring narratives. Thank you.